we're going to go ahead and tackle the rear gearbox. And before you do this, you should locate bag C in your kit, and it should be a couple of parts. Just so you remember, bag C contains the shorter outdrive. So if you're building this out of sequence, you might just want to just locate the gearbox bag with the shorter outdrive. And also what you would need for this build is you should locate your black grease, and we're going to use the black grease to lubricate the CVA dog bone and get that set up. So what you're going to do is just grab this part, grab some black grease, and we're just going to go ahead and lubricate this joint up here. And you should also have some paper towels handy too, because I have a tendency to lubricate the part, but then I get messy, and then every other part gets black grease all over it. But what I'm going to do is just make sure that I have enough black grease so that this is lubed up nicely. It's fitting. Then just want to get some more black grease on it. I didn't have enough. Sometimes you make too much of a mess and you get cautious and you use too little, and that's just as bad as well. So let's make sure that this is nice and lubricated, and that's actually looking pretty good. Also, just so you know, the black grease also helps keep that part in place as you're putting in that pinion gear, or that pin there. There we are, and make sure you put in the pin in the right spot. And just checking, and that is looking good. Now I can grab the outdrive. So that is looking good. I'm just going to grab the outdrive and just making sure that it's centered enough. So just want to make sure that this is going to work okay. Yep. And let's grab the pin so everything is lined up. Just push the pin through, and that is looking good. So everything is flexing and bending okay. And then I could go ahead and grab the outer ring and get that installed. Alright, so I'm just going to grab that outer ring. Before I do that, just so you know, there is this screw in there, and it's not mentioned anywhere in the instruction manual, but I like to add it in. What this does, oops, it keeps dropping it. Good thing I'm working on a magnetic mat there. But what this does is this screw actually helps lock the pin in just a little bit better, and I'm not sure why it's not mentioned in the instruction manual. Maybe you're meant to leave it out, but hey, since I have this extra part, I'm not gonna not use it. I'm going to use it anyways. So I'm just gonna screw it in, and there we have it. So now I'm just gonna grab this locking ring. I'm just gonna push this in, and making sure that the locking ring is set. The outer spacer in the locking ring is set 90 degrees to where the pin is at, so this way the pin won't fall out. Also, as another tip, in the instruction manual you should grab some CA glue and take the CA glue and then just put a drop of CA glue where that space is for that ring is at. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too, and just put one dab or one drop there. And I apologize, I'm out of frame for this. Let me move it in so you can see where that dab of glue is at. And there we have it. And we'll just set this aside. We'll let this dry for a little bit, and as it's drying, we'll go ahead and get started on the drive shaft portion. So, and I'm going to grab one of these rings here, these washers. For the drive shaft, you would grab a washer, and you'd put in the ball bearing, then you put in the other ball bearing, and then you put in the other washer. I'm actually using the Cow RC magnetic mat, and it's actually so good that it's kind of hard to pick up washers sometimes. There we go. So got the washer in there, and then once you have the washer and the ball bearings in there, you'd put in the pin, and then we'd put in the gear head here. And just so you know, the gear head has been sanded in the previous video, so I actually sanded in that gear head, and I'm just going to go ahead and push this in. There we go, just making sure that everything is lining up, and I'm going to just push this in. Great. And it takes a little force to push it in, but just so you're aware, it's everything should be okay. And once this is placed in, here we go. Come on, just gotta give it another tug. Some of you guys might have an easier time with this. For some reason, mine's just a little harder to push in, or I'm probably just pushing in the wrong. I'm not using enough force to push it in. There we go. That looks good. There we are. That just dropped in. Perfect. Everything is looking great. So now that that is working in okay, I could go ahead and finish building out this gearbox here. Oh yeah. Once I have that washer in, I want to put in the. Once I have that gear head in, I'm going to use an E-clip, and I'm going to go ahead and push in the E-clip so that that is sticking, and this way that gear head is going to fit better in that alt drive. And let me just give it another push here, and I apologize for this being out of focus. It's as I'm working on this, it's kind of hard to man both the camera and the construction build at the same time. But what you want to do is just get that E-clip in nice and tight, so everything's fitting flush with the ball bearing, or that washer and the ball bearing, in that pin. And what I'm going to do now is add in some differential grease and have that all set up and lubricated and ready to go when I drop that into the rear part of the gearbox. Alright, so here is the gearbox, and get the camera in focus, and essentially all you do for this part, this drive gear, is you just drop that in, and that is fitting pretty nicely. Then we're just grabbing in the rear differential, drop this in, and check it out. It's turning nicely, and it's working pretty nicely. And I'm just going to go ahead and just add in some more of the differential grease and making sure that everything is nicely lubricated. I'm just going to give the outer drive just a turn here in a little bit, but I'm just going to smear in some of the differential grease in there. So I'm going to try to make a rotation here. I'm going to try to make at least 1 or 2 rotations so that the differential grease is evenly distributed. And just checking this out. Whoops. Here we are. Just going to make sure I have my orientation correct. There we go. And this is the way you should orient the gearbox for the rear gearbox. And yes, that is rotating much better now. I'm going to just grab the top cover, just place that on, and I'm going to screw this in, and when I screw this in, I'm going to use a star pattern. I'm a firm believer in using the star pattern, because sometimes if you screw it in incorrectly, you have a kind of a lopsided gearbox. You might have coverage more on one side than the other. By using the star pattern, you evenly distribute the pressure across the entire gearbox, and thus keeping the differential grease from leaking out. And once again, it's just some drivers like prefer just kind of fastening everything in the clockwise order. I highly suggest just using that star pattern. If you don't use the star pattern, maybe the next time you rebuild your gearbox, just try it out to see if it makes any difference for you. I found for me it's increased the construction quality of my kits by doing so. And we'll just go ahead and just give this a little turn and check it out. The gearbox is working very nicely, and pretty happy about this. And the ball diff is working good. Thanks for watching, and remember, everything matters.